The Stittsville Flea Market used to attract thousands of visitors to Stittsville every Sunday. When it closed down in 2004, after 30 years in operation, this flea market was billed as the largest indoor-outdoor year-round flea market in Canada. Located on the south side of Hazeldean Road between Stittsville Main Street and Carp Road, it grew from one building in 1974 to a complex involving over 75,000 square feet of exhibit space, both indoor and outdoor. It was the bustling atmosphere of the flea market, along with the reality that just about anything could be found among its vendors, that made it a destination for bargain hunters from the Ottawa area and beyond. In addition, it was a must-see for many tourists to the nation's capital. It was known to draw up to 20,000 visitors on its busiest Sundays. Signage at the Stittsville Flea Market in its early years identified it as the largest flea market in Eastern Ontario. This eventually changed, with the flea market stepping up to claim to be the largest year-round indoor-outdoor flea market in all of Canada. This is a view of Hazeldean Road looking west from the Stittsville Main Street intersection as it appears today. The water tower, a Stittsville landmark, can be seen on the right in the distance. The road is now 4 lanes with development on both sides, and the 5-story Hazeldean Gardens retirement residence dominates the view. And this view now will go back in time 32 years in total to 1988, when the Stittsville Flea Market was well established, attracting thousands to the site each Sunday throughout the year. You have to look closely in this view to see the flea market buildings just beyond the white Instronics Building, which was also a flea market at that time. Founder and originator of the flea market was John Gibson, an auctioneer and entrepreneur who had been holding auction sales at the Stittsville Legion Hall for several years before building Gibson Hall at the flea market site on what was then Provincial Highway number 7. It's now the Hazeldean Road. This map from 1974 shows the village of Stittsville as it was then. Hazeldean Road, which was then known simply as Highway 7, is at the far left. The location of the Stittsville Flea Market is outlined in red. It is between Highway 7 on the left and Neil Avenue on the right. So what was on the site in 1974 that when John Gibson began a flea market at his Gibson Hall? Well, on the south side of the highway, starting from Stittsville Main Street, there was the then low-lying area where the Welcome to Stittsville sign is now. Beyond this was an Ontario Ministry of Transportation maintenance depot on a 2-acre site. Remember, what is now Hazeldean Road was at that time a provincial highway, part of the Trans-Canada Highway System. This maintenance depot served the highway. Then, west of this was the manufacturing building of Instronics, a firm which specialized in precision mapping equipment. It was Stittsville's industrial leader in the 1960s and early 1970s. Next to this Instronics building was what later became the White House restaurant, but which served as the main office for Instronics. Beyond this, there was the Patoro's Inn restaurant, which served both Italian and Canadian food. This Patoro's building still exists on the site. It later served as an office for the flea market. Near the Patoro's Inn was Gibson Hall, the initial flea market building of 1974. In 1975, John Gibson developed a miniature golf course near his Gibson Hall. He called it Summer Greens Miniature Golf, and it operated throughout his 5 years when he owned the flea market. It was your typical miniature golf layout, finally being removed from the site in 1981 as the flea market grew in size and popularity. The land became just too valuable to be used as a miniature golf operation, and it was needed for parking. 1976 saw John Gibson erect a new 7,000 square foot building, which looked identical to the original Gibson Hall and doubled the size of the flea market. It was just west of Gibson Hall and attached to it. The flea market could now accommodate more than 100 dealers, with a large outside tent accommodating about 25 more dealers. It claimed at that time to be the largest flea market in Eastern Ontario. For the building's grand opening on August 8th that year, Gibson gave away 1,000 free passes to his Summer Greens miniature golf. It was a rainy day, but the parking lot was jammed all afternoon. Cars also lined up along both sides of Highway 7 for quite a distance. This was a prelude to a parking problem that would plague the flea market for over 15 years. In 1977, John Gibson added a third building to the site. West of the existing two buildings, the new 5,300 square foot building would house over 50 dealers, increasing the total number of indoor vendors at the flea market to over 150. There was also room for 150 outdoor vendors. The building had the same appearance as the two existing buildings on the site. Gibson was advertising the flea market at this time as a place where you could find almost anything from soup to nuts. This included antiques, books, hardware, jewelry, china, pine furniture, arts and crafts, plants, vegetables, and way more. In 1978, a fourth major building was erected on the flea market. This 6,000 square foot building allowed the total number of indoor vendors to increase to over 225. In addition, at the same time, a 10-acre, 1,000 vehicle parking lot was developed on the north side of the highway. Sunday attendance continued to grow, with as many as 8,000 visiting the site on the busiest of Sundays at this time. Goulburn Township was concerned about the parking situation because of ongoing parking problems along the highway on Sundays. Gibson promised better traffic control at the flea market, as he was hiring 2 people to direct traffic on the site. He also promised that parking spaces on the site would be used for parking and not a space for outside vendors. But parking continued to be a problem at the flea market. No parking signs did not do the trick in keeping people from parking along the highway, as well as along Neil Avenue and McCooey Lane immediately south of the flea market site. On Sunday, August 19th, 1979, for instance, as part of a crackdown on this illegal parking, the Ontario Provincial Police handed out a whopping 290 parking tickets along Highway 7. This was despite there being no parking signs every few yards along the highway. This was despite the fact that the flea market had developed its 10-acre parking area on the north side of the highway, where parking cost only 50 cents. Parking tickets in comparison ranged up to $28.50. This image now on the screen shows this former parking area as it looks today. With the OPP actions on Highway 7 discouraging parking there, the parking problems on Neil Avenue and McCooey Lane became even worse. The township sent out its bylaw officer to ticket these vehicles, but the township fine was only $8. Making matters worse was the opening of another flea market in the Instronics Building. Instronics had folded, with Alan Sharpley now owning both the Instronics Building and the White House Building, which became a restaurant. Sharpley had intended to rent the 25,000 square foot 2-story building as office and professional space, but it was going to be costly to convert it to such a use. So he turned it into another flea market called Stitzel Antiques, Arts and Crafts. He had both indoor and outdoor vendors operating every Sunday. He opened it in June 1979. With the flea market booming and parking problems prevalent, Gibson's Stitzel Flea Market was sold in September 1979 to Grant Kavanaugh of Ottawa. John Gibson went on to start a flea market and auction hall in Carleton Place. Kavanaugh would operate and continue to improve the flea market until his sudden death in February 1997 at the age of 75 while on vacation in Florida. The Kavanaugh family, though, continued to own the flea market until it closed in 2004. The Kavanaugh years saw the flea market continue to grow in size and number of vendors. There were even plans for greater growth that never materialized. For a number of years, around 1980, a caboose was a noticeable landmark at the Stittsville Flea Market. It started out on the south side of the road and in 1982 ended up on the north side at the entrance to the parking area there. An initial Kavanaugh plan in 1980 was not only to expand the flea market, but to shift it to the north side of the highway. There was a proposal for a new 50,000 square foot building that's 100 feet wide and 500 feet long. The 4 existing buildings south of the highway would continue to be used, although the long-range plan was for these buildings to be converted into other uses. This proposal even got Goulburn Township site plan approval, but then it never went ahead. An interesting proposed feature of this proposal was that the parking area north of the highway, where the new building would be also used as a drive-in theater, operating during the week with the flea market operating on Sundays. This would have given Stittsville residents the opportunity to have a family night out with the parents and kids having fun together. They would enjoy seeing award-winning Oscar potential feature films, such as the one now on the drive-in screen. Boy, that actor looks awfully familiar. Is it Tom Cruise? No. Is it Tom Hanks? No. Is it that Indiana Jones fellow? It's hard to keep those handsome leading actors straight. Who is that good-looking guy? Instead of the giant new building north of the highway, the Stittsville Flea Market saw a new 9,000 square foot building erected in 1981 on the south side of the road, the 5th building on the site. Called Heritage Hall, this 60-foot by 150-foot pre-manufactured log building expanded the indoor space at the flea market to 25,000 square feet. The north side of the highway remained as the major parking area for the flea market. In 1982, the flea market expanded again. A new 3,000 square foot building was added to accommodate even more vendors on the site. As this ad from Stittsville's 1988 phone directory shows, the Stittsville Flea Market was attracting thousands each Sunday, offering just about everything under the sun. It was now billing itself as the largest year-round indoor-outdoor flea market in all of Canada, not just Eastern Ontario. Throughout the 1980s, the flea market continued to draw huge crowds every Sunday, sometimes reaching as many as an estimated 20,000. By 1996, the Stittsville Flea Market had grown to include 7 buildings with some 75,000 square feet of exhibit space. The whole flea market site on the south side of what was then Hazeldean Road had been paved, improving conditions for the outside vendors while also helping for the customers moving from building to building. The buildings on the flea market site were each given a name, such as Heritage Hall, the Marketplace, Nostalgia Place, Treasure Alley, Back Room, and the East Side Building. This East Side Building was the last addition to the Stitzel Flea Market holdings, being the former Instronics Building and site of Alan Sharpley's Flea Market, which had opened in 1979. This East Side Building came to house, in part, the Art Rise Gallery, which was an artists' cooperative which opened on Sundays beginning in 1997 as part of the flea market. The building that had become the White House restaurant was acquired by the flea market along with the Instronics Building. It remained as a restaurant until being closed down and then demolished by the flea market. Sunday, December 19th, 2004, was the last day for the Stitzel Flea Market. It was a cold day with a biting wind blowing. The closing had been announced in late September, 2.5 months before the actual shutdown. Although there were no definite redevelopment plans announced, the decision was made so that the property could be developed to its highest potential. It was a prime piece of property in a growing Stittsville, and a one-day-a-week flea market operation was considered not the best use of the site. This has proven to be true, albeit slow in coming. The Hazeldean Gardens retirement residence, a Royal Oak pub, and a medical office building are now erected on the site, with lots of area still to be developed. The flea market buildings themselves were all removed from the site in 2005, except for the former Patoro's restaurant building that had been used as an office. It remains on the site to this day, accompanied by a for sale sign for the property. The Instronics Building was demolished in 2009 after attempts to rent the premises for office and professional space failed to generate interest. It was decided that a vacant site would open up more development opportunities than a site with a building on it. Another building that was in this flea market area for several years was a Confederation log homes model home, which was erected on the former Ministry of Transportation garage site in 1988. It later became a golf shop before being removed from the site. This log home was located immediately west of the Welcome to Stittsville sign area, which is now Kavanaugh Green, with the paddleball court and other features. Interestingly, a number of scenes in a $2 million movie, The Random Factor, were shot at this log home in January 1995, as this headline indicates. It was a science fiction adventure film that starts in a Canadian city and leads to another universe. CTV's Max Keeping even had a cameo role in this movie. Although parking or the handing out of tickets on flea market days was always controversial, yet another controversy arose in early 1991 about the licensing of flea markets and individual vendors. This caused quite a flurry and revealed some interesting facts about the flea market. The township had gone ahead and without consultation passed a licensing bylaw for flea markets and individual vendors. The licensing fee was $1,500 a year for a flea market, and rates ranging from $25 a week to $500 a year for vendors of individual stalls at the flea market. Reaction was such that the bylaw, while passed, was never put into force, but it did draw a reaction from the Stittsville Flea Market, with manager Hal Raycroft, seen here, threatening that the flea market would relocate elsewhere in Ottawa-Carleton. It was estimated that the township would collect over $300,000 from the licensing fees. This came at a bad time generally for the flea market. Overall, wide open Sunday shopping was just starting, giving the flea market retail competition. There was also the introduction of the GST, and a recession was underway, both affecting business. Some information that arose from the controversy: the proposed $25 license fee for a daily stall renter, for instance, was the same amount as the renter paid for the space in the first place. Kavanaugh Realty Limited, owner of the flea market, paid over $75,000 in property and business taxes in 1990. And at that time, close to 60 people worked at the flea market on Sundays, mostly students. Parking continued to be a source of contention between the township and the flea market. The township claimed that the flea market was 30% deficient on its parking requirements, even with the parking area north of Hazeldean Road. Just the year before, the no parking zone along Hazeldean Road was expanded to as far east as the current Home Hardware and as far west as beyond the Carp Road, about where the traffic light is at the western entrance to today's Sobeys store. No parking had also been extended along Carp Road. The Stittsville Flea Market was the site of Goulburn's Canada Day fireworks for a number of years. Parking and viewing were on the south side of Hazeldean Road, with the fireworks set off on the north side. Crowds were estimated at 3,000 to 4,000. This happened on Canada Day in 1998, the year 2000, 2002, and 2004, before the flea market closed down and the fireworks site was shifted to the Goulburn Recreation Complex. From 1998 to 2004, Canada Day celebrations for Goulburn rotated between Stittsville and Richmond, which is why the fireworks happened at the flea market every second year. In August 1997, the flea market was the site for a traveling tent circus sponsored by the Stitzel District Lions Club. There were 2 performances given on one day under the big top, which was put up on the site in the morning using an elephant. Youngsters could get their pictures taken riding the elephant. Her name was Viola. She was very impressive in size and was very strong. She was the elephant that provided the muscle to raise the big top tent. This circus returned 2 years later in 1999, again putting on 2 performances at the Stittsville Flea Market. So what has been the legacy of the Stittsville Flea Market and its 30 years of attracting visitors to the site? Well, it created memories for many from both near and far who visited the site over the years. It provided jobs and was a venue at which local craftsmen and vendors could sell their wares. The Stittsville Flea Market also brought notoriety and fame to Stittsville as the home of the largest year-round indoor-outdoor flea market in Eastern Ontario and then in Canada. People throughout the area knew of Stittsville thanks to the flea market, one of Stittsville's marquee attractions. But there were others. One of these was the Delaware Auto Dealership, with its just beyond the fringe motto, which is now the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board's Facilities Depot on Stittsville Main Street across from Brown's Yig. Another attraction was the Capital City Speedway, which attracted up to 5,000 fans on Wednesday nights in the summertime to its stock car racing track just west of Stittsville. The Speedway's giant sign, in fact, can still be seen from the new 4-lane Highway 7 just west of the Hazeldean Road interchange. So the Stittsville Flea Market, along with both Delaware Motors and Capital City Speedway, were Stittsville-based attractions that made the community well known beyond its borders in these years. Another legacy is that Stittsville is still home to a popular flea market. The Carp Road Flea Market began on January 2nd, 2005, just 2 weeks after the Stittsville Flea Market closed, and it continues today. But probably the most unique legacy of the Stittsville Flea Market has been its connection to scouting in Stittsville. The Stittsville Scout Badge was designed in 1986, featuring a flea, a tribute to the Stittsville Flea Market. This badge with its flea remains the first Stittsville Scouting Group's identification badge today. It is perhaps a union of equals. Stittsville Scouting has always been touted as being one of, if not the largest scouting group in Canada. And the Stittsville Flea Market, as we know, was the largest year-round indoor-outdoor flea market in Canada. It was a marriage of 2 of Canada's largest in this badge, both with Stittsville connections and drawn together by that tiny critter, a flea. And that's it. So now we'll go on to questions, I believe. So thanks very much for your attention.